Hard times have a way of making your heart weak. You start questioning everything. You wonder why things are not working, why doors keep closing, and why life feels so heavy. Slowly, doubt begins to replace trust. You make dua, but inside you feel tired. You try to stay patient, but your mind keeps asking, what if nothing changes? This is exactly when your faith matters most. Islam teaches that Allah does not abandon you during hardship. In fact, many times the difficult season is the very thing bringing you closer to Him. When you stop doubting and truly trust Allah, your heart begins to change before your situation changes. Today, we will understand how trusting Allah during hard times can completely transform your peace, mindset, and life. 1. Hard times reveal where your trust really is. It is one of the quieter truths of the spiritual life that you do not truly know the condition of your heart until that heart is tested. In the comfortable seasons, when life is flowing, when prayers feel answered, when the future looks manageable, it is easy to believe that your trust in Allah is deep and solid. You feel grateful, you feel connected, you feel in the warmth of ease that your faith is something you fully possess. But ease is not a very accurate mirror. It shows you a reflection, but not always a true one. The true mirror of the heart is difficulty, because difficulty is the only condition that strips away what was performed and reveals what was actually there underneath. Many people discover through hardship that what they believed was trust in Allah was, in fact, trust in their circumstance being good. Their peace was not rooted in Allah, it was rooted in things going well, in people being kind, in plans succeeding, in health being present, in provision being sufficient. And when any of those things changed, the peace changed with it. This is not a judgment, it is an honest and very common human experience. The heart, without consistent and intentional cultivation, tends to anchor itself to what is visible and present, rather than to the one who is always present but not always visible in the way we expect. Difficulty simply makes this visible. It exposes the anchor for what it is. When hardship arrives and the heart becomes anxious, the anxiety itself is information. It is telling you something true about where your peace was actually resting. A heart that is genuinely anchored in Allah does not become anxiety-free in difficulty. It still feels the weight of what is hard, but the anxiety does not reach the same depths because the ground beneath is not shaking. The person whose trust is genuinely in Allah can feel the storm and still know somewhere beneath the feeling that they are held. The person whose trust was in their circumstances finds that when the circumstances shake, everything shakes, because the ground itself was always the circumstance rather than the Creator who stands behind all circumstances. Recognizing this is not cause for shame, it is cause for honest reassessment and genuine rebuilding. The heart that discovers through a hard season that its trust was misplaced, that it was resting on things that can be removed rather than the one who cannot, has been given a gift, a painful gift, but a real one. Because now it knows, now it can choose with awareness to do the work of moving the anchor, to stop placing its peace in what is visible and to begin deliberately and consistently placing it in Allah. This is not a single decision made once. It is a practice daily, sometimes hourly, of returning the heart to its proper resting place whenever difficulty pulls it elsewhere. The Quran describes this beautifully when it speaks of the believers as those whose hearts tremble with awe when Allah is mentioned and whose faith increases when His verses are recited. This trembling is not fear in the paralyzing sense. It is the responsiveness of a heart that is genuinely alive to the reality of its Lord. A heart that has been through difficulty and has found Allah to be faithful within it is a heart that trembles and is stable at the same time. It is moved by the remembrance of Allah because it knows from lived experience that that remembrance is not empty. It has been tested. It found truth on the other side. And that found truth is the deepest anchor available to any human heart. The most honest prayer you can offer in a moment of recognized misplaced trust is also one of the simplest. Ya Allah, my heart has been resting in the wrong place. Help me move it back to you. This prayer requires vulnerability, the willingness to acknowledge that your trust was not as complete as you believed. But that vulnerability is precisely what Allah honors. He does not require you to arrive with a perfect heart. He requires you to bring the heart you have, honestly, and to ask Him for the one you need. That asking, sincere, humble, and real, is already the beginning of the trust you are trying to build. You have already moved the anchor by admitting where it was and choosing to place it somewhere better. 2. Doubt drains your heart and mind. Doubt, in the context of hard times, is not simply an intellectual uncertainty. It is an emotional and spiritual drain that operates continuously beneath the surface of your daily life. It is the low hum of what if things never change running in the background of everything you do. It colors the morning before it has properly begun. It makes even ordinary tasks feel heavier than they are because they are being done by a person who is quietly carrying a question that has no current answer. This drain is real and it is cumulative. A day of doubt is tiring, a week of it is exhausting, a month of it can leave a person feeling depleted in a way that sleep and distraction cannot restore because the source of the depletion is not physical. One of the most significant costs of doubt is what it does to your relationship with dua. When doubt is active in the heart, prayer begins to feel performative rather than genuine. You say the words, but somewhere beneath the words is a quiet conviction that they will not reach anywhere meaningful. You complete the form of supplication, but have surrendered the substance of it, the actual living belief that Allah hears and will respond. And a dua made without genuine hope is like a letter sent to an address you do not believe exists. The action is performed, but the heart is not truly in it. And the heart is precisely what makes dua powerful. Without it, you are going through motions that your own doubt has already emptied of their meaning. Doubt also creates the exhausting and entirely fruitless habit of trying to mentally manage what only Allah can manage. When you do not truly trust that your situation is in good hands, you instinctively try to take it back into your own hands through overthinking, through endless analysis of what went wrong and what might go differently, through the constant replaying of scenarios in the hope that more thinking will somehow produce more control. But more thinking does not produce more control. It produces more fatigue. And it keeps the mind occupied in a cycle that moves in circles rather than forward, consuming the very mental and emotional energy that you need in order to actually do what is within your power to do in your situation. The Prophet, peace be upon him, sought refuge from worry and grief in his daily supplication, naming them specifically as things to be released to Allah. This specificity is instructive. Worry, the anticipatory anxiety about the future, and grief, the weight of what has already passed, are the two primary forms that doubt takes in the heart. They keep the heart suspended between a past it cannot change and a future it cannot control. And in doing so, they steal the present, the only moment in which genuine action, genuine prayer, and genuine trust are actually possible. To release worry and grief to Allah is not to stop caring about what happens, it is to stop carrying what was never yours to carry in the first place. Trust, by contrast, is profoundly restorative. Not the surface level trust of a person who simply says the words without meaning them, but the genuine, practiced, daily chosen trust of a person who has decided to release the outcome to Allah and mean it. This kind of trust does not make the difficulty disappear, but it changes the quality of how the difficulty is experienced. The weight does not increase with each passing hour of anxiety. The mind does not consume itself in circular thinking. The heart has room to breathe because it has put down what it was holding, the illusion of control, the burden of knowing what it cannot know, the exhausting pretense of managing what only Allah manages. Trust is the rest that doubt prevents. If you notice that you are drained, not just physically, but in some deeper way that you cannot quite name, it is worth asking honestly, where is my doubt living right now? What specific aspect of my situation am I refusing beneath the surface to trust to Allah? What am I still gripping that I have said with my mouth I have released? These are not easy questions, but they are honest ones. And the honest acknowledgement of where doubt is living is the first step toward dislodging it, toward choosing consciously and deliberately to release what the doubt has been holding and to place it again in the hands that were always meant to hold it. Every time you make that choice, you reclaim a portion of the peace that doubt has been taking. Rifan, Allah is working even when you cannot see it. There is perhaps no more comforting truth in the entire Islamic understanding of difficulty than this. The absence of visible change does not mean the absence of divine action. Allah is always working, In the seasons when everything seems still, when the door you have been knocking on remains closed, when the prayer you have been making seems unanswered, when the situation you are in shows no outward signs of movement, He is working. Behind the visible surface of your circumstances, in the dimensions of cause and effect that you cannot access, in the hearts of people whose decisions will affect your life, in the timing of events that has not yet arrived but is being arranged with a precision that your current frustration cannot appreciate, He is always continuously working. The Quran tells us that Allah plans and people plan, but Allah is the best of planners. This is not a generic reassurance. It is a specific and radical claim about the nature of reality, that behind the events of your life, even the events that frustrate and confuse and disappoint you, there is a plan, not a careless or indifferent plan, a best plan, a plan made by the one whose knowledge is complete, whose wisdom is perfect, and whose love for you is not in question. The difficulty is inside this plan. The closed door is inside this plan. The delay that is making you impatient is inside this plan. And the plan, though you cannot see its full shape from where you are standing, is better than any plan your own understanding could have produced. One of the most repeated concepts in Islamic teaching about hardship is that what appears to be rejection may actually be protection. What appears to be a door closed may be the prevention of something that would have harmed you in ways you would never have known. What appears to be a delay may be the arrangement of something better in its place, something that requires more time to be ready either in your life or in the lives of others involved. This perspective does not make the disappointment painless, but it makes it bearable. It makes it possible to sit with a closed door and not collapse against it, because you know that the one who closed it knows what is on the other side and chose, for reasons of genuine care, not to open it yet. The story of the Prophet Musa, peace be upon him, contains one of the most powerful illustrations of this truth. When the children of Israel stood at the edge of the sea with Pharaoh's army behind them, every visible circumstance pointed to disaster. There was nowhere to go. And yet, in that very moment, when human logic had run out of options, Allah's command came, strike the sea with your staff. And the sea parted. The solution was not visible until the moment it was needed. The protection was not apparent until the last moment before the harm. This is the nature of how Allah works. And it requires from the believer a trust that does not demand visibility before it will function, a trust that continues even when the sea has not yet parted. Learning to look for Allah's hand in what has already passed is one of the most powerful ways to build trust in what is currently happening. Think back over the chapters of your life, the things that did not go the way you wanted, the plans that failed, the doors that closed. How many of them, seen now from a later vantage point, look different from how they looked at the time? How many of the disappointments eventually revealed themselves as redirections? How many of the painful endings turned out to be the beginning of something that served you better? This is not to say that every difficult thing ends in an obvious happy resolution, but it is to say that Allah's arrangement of your life has always been more careful than your anxiety gave it credit for. Let that history be evidence for your present trust. When nothing seems to be moving in the situation you are waiting on, the most powerful thing you can do is practice the art of unseen gratitude. Gratitude for what Allah is doing that you cannot yet see. This sounds strange because gratitude usually follows awareness of a blessing, but the believer is called to something more subtle and more sophisticated than that. The trust that blessings are being arranged even before they are visible, and the gratitude that flows from that trust rather than waiting for proof. This quality of advanced gratitude is one of the hallmarks of genuine tawakkul. It says, I do not need to see your hand to thank you for it. I know it is there. I know you are working. And I choose to be grateful for what you are doing in the unseen, with the same sincerity as I would for what I can see. 4. Tawakkul brings a different kind of peace. Tawakkul is one of the most frequently mentioned and most deeply misunderstood concepts in Islamic daily life. It is invoked constantly in conversation, in advice, in the encouragement given to those who are struggling, but it is often reduced to a phrase rather than practiced as a reality. True tawakkul is not the passive acceptance of whatever comes with a resigned shrug. It is not the abandonment of effort or the refusal to engage practically with your situation. And it is certainly not the performance of calm for the benefit of others while the inner life remains turbulent and untrusting. Tawakkul is something far more active, far more specific, and far more powerful than any of these common misunderstandings suggest. The most complete definition of tawakkul given in Islamic tradition is this: to take all the means that are within your ability and then to entrust the outcome fully and sincerely to Allah. This sequencing is everything. Tawakkul does not begin with releasing. It begins with doing, with the full, honest, sincere effort of a person who takes their responsibility seriously and who does not use trust in Allah as an excuse for their own inaction. The camel is tied, the application is submitted, the effort is made, the conversation is had, the practical steps are taken, and then, only then, and with genuine sincerity, the outcome is placed in Allah's hands. This is the tawakkul of the Prophet, peace be upon him. It is effort followed by trust, not trust used as a substitute for effort. The peace that tawakkul brings is genuinely different from any other kind of peace available to a human being. It is different from the peace of having resolved your problems. That peace depends on circumstances and disappears when circumstances change. It is different from the peace of distraction. That peace is borrowed from the future and always comes due. It is different from the peace of suppression. That peace is performance, not reality. The peace of tawakkul is the peace of a person who has genuinely handed over what they cannot carry to the one who can carry it, with the sincere belief that it will be managed with more wisdom and more care than they themselves could provide. It is a peace that coexists with uncertainty, not because the uncertainty is gone, but because it has been placed in trustworthy hands. One of the most practical ways to move into genuine tawakkul in the middle of a hard situation is to ask yourself a simple and honest question. What is actually within my power to do right now? Not what you wish you could do, not what would resolve the situation if only the variables cooperated, but what is genuinely, presently within your actual ability to act on. Do that, do it fully and with your best effort. And then, with everything that remains, the outcome, the timing, the decisions of others, the factors entirely outside your reach, say with your whole heart, Ya Allah, this is yours. I have done my part. I trust you with what I cannot do. This practice, repeated in every situation, builds the muscle of tawakkul through use until it becomes the natural, default orientation of your heart. Tawakkul also changes how you experience the waiting that hard times so often require. Waiting without trust is agony. It is the experience of time passing while nothing moves, while anxiety accumulates and hope thins. But waiting with tawakkul has a different quality. It is active waiting, not passive endurance, but engaged patience. You continue to pray, you continue to make dua, you continue to do what is yours to do. But you do all of this without the desperate grip of a person who believes that if they relax their hold for a single moment, everything will fall apart. You are holding your effort and releasing the outcome. And in that release, even the waiting becomes bearable, because you know that the time is not empty. Allah is filling it with what you cannot yet see. The Quran speaks of those who truly trust in Allah with a language of extraordinary promise. Whoever relies upon Allah, then He is sufficient for him. Not partially sufficient, not sufficient under certain conditions, sufficient. This is the promise that genuine tawakkul reaches for, and the more honestly it is practiced, the more this sufficiency becomes a lived experience rather than a theological statement. People who have developed genuine tawakkul report not the absence of difficulty, but a different relationship with it. The difficulty is still there, the uncertainty is still there, but the person is not being crushed by it because they are not carrying it alone. Allah, in whom they have genuinely placed their trust, has taken the weight that they were never meant to carry. That is what sufficient means. That is what tawakkul, practiced sincerely, actually feels like. 5. Hardship can build the strongest version of you. There is a quality that can only be built through difficulty. Not because Allah wants you to suffer, but because certain forms of strength simply do not exist in comfortable soil. Patience that has never been tested is not patience, it is ease wearing patience's name. Compassion that has never known pain is thin and theoretical. Gratitude that has never experienced loss is pleasant but shallow. Faith that has never been challenged does not know its own depth. The hard seasons of your life, faced with sincerity and genuine reliance on Allah, are not detours from the journey of becoming the best version of yourself. They are, in many cases, the most direct path through it. The difficulty is not the obstacle to your growth. It is frequently the mechanism of it. The Quran gives us a remarkable image. It says that gold is purified through fire. This is a simple and profound analogy for what hardship does to a believing heart. The fire does not destroy the gold, it removes what is not gold. The difficulty does not destroy the believer, it removes what is not faith. The impurities that comfort allows to remain, the attachment to what is temporary, the dependence on what can be taken, the complacency about what really matters, all of these are addressed by genuine difficulty. Not comfortably, not pleasantly, but effectively. What remains after the fire is more pure, more genuinely itself, more valuable for having been through what it went through. This is the Islamic understanding of what hardship is for, and it changes everything about how you can choose to relate to it. Emotional strength, the capacity to feel difficulty without being defined by it, to experience loss without losing yourself, to carry pain without becoming bitter, is one of the most valuable qualities a human being can possess. And it cannot be developed in the absence of difficulty any more than physical strength can be developed without resistance. The muscle grows at the point of challenge, not at the point of ease. The woman who has been through genuine hardship and has maintained her faith, her kindness, and her trust in Allah through it has developed something that cannot be purchased or pretended. She has been through a forge and come out changed, not harder in the brittle sense, but stronger in the rooted sense. She knows what she is made of because she has seen it tested. Hardship also builds a quality of wisdom that no amount of study can produce on its own. There are things you only understand when you have lived them. The depth of what a person needs when they are truly struggling, the inadequacy of easy answers in the face of genuine pain, the way that faith either holds or reveals its fragility when everything else is removed. A woman who has been through difficulty and has allowed it to teach her, rather than merely hurt her, has a depth of understanding that shows in how she listens, how she speaks, how she responds to others in their own hard seasons. This wisdom is a gift, first to herself and then to everyone whose life she touches. It is something the comfortable seasons could not have given her. It is worth noting that the greatest human beings in Islamic history, the prophets, the companions, the righteous, were also the most tested. Ibrahim, peace be upon him, was tested with the command to sacrifice his son. Maryam, may Allah be pleased with her, faced social accusation while holding the truth of her own innocence. Asya faced the cruelty of Pharaoh while maintaining her faith. Hajar was left alone in a desert with an infant and responded not with despair but with action and trust. These are not cautionary tales, they are models. They tell us that proximity to Allah and intensity of test are not opposites. They often travel together. The test is not evidence of distance from Allah, it is sometimes the very sign of His trust in what your heart is capable of becoming. Perhaps the most important shift available to a person in a hard season is the shift from asking, "Why is this happening to me?" to asking, "What is this building in me?" These are not the same question, and they lead to completely different inner experiences. The first question positions you as a victim of your circumstances, passive and confused. The second positions you as an active participant in a process of growth, one who is genuinely curious about what Allah is developing through this difficulty. The second question does not deny the pain. It does not pretend the situation is good when it is genuinely hard. It simply changes the orientation from one of resistance and confusion to one of active, curious, faith-filled engagement with what is happening. And that shift in orientation changes everything about how the difficulty is carried. 6. Everything changes when your heart returns to Allah. There is a moment that many people who have walked through genuine hardship describe in similar terms. A moment when something shifts, not in the external circumstances, which may remain exactly as difficult as they were, but in the heart. A point at which the relying on people, on plans, on outcomes, on the careful management of variables, the point at which all of that falls away or is finally and genuinely released, and what remains is simply the heart and its creator. People describe this moment differently, but the quality of it is remarkably consistent, an unexpected quiet, a settling, something that feels in the middle of genuinely difficult circumstances like coming home. This is what happens when the heart returns to Allah. and it is available not just to the spiritually advanced, but to anyone who chooses sincerely and without reservation to make the return. The shift that happens in the heart when it returns to Allah is not primarily a shift in emotion, though the emotions change too. It is a shift in orientation, in what the heart is facing, what it is reaching for, what it considers to be the primary source of its stability and its sense of being okay. Before the return, the heart is facing outward, toward people, toward outcomes, toward the resolution of the situation. After the return, it is facing toward Allah, and everything else, including the difficulty, is seen from within that facing rather than being the primary thing that is seen. This change of direction does not remove the difficulty from view. It simply ensures that you are no longer looking at it alone. You are looking at it with Allah behind your eyes and beneath your feet. When people stop relying primarily on other human beings for their stability and begin relying on Allah, they often describe a particular kind of freedom that they did not expect. The freedom of no longer needing specific people to respond in specific ways in order to feel okay. The freedom of not requiring a particular outcome to feel that Allah is with them. The freedom of being able to receive both good and difficult news without being shattered by the difficult or inflated by the good, because neither one is the source of their ground. This freedom does not make relationships less meaningful. In many cases, it makes them more so, because you can be fully present in them without being dependent on them. You can love without the desperation of a person who has nowhere else to go. The practical expressions of returning the heart to Allah are well established in Islamic tradition and worth naming specifically. The 5 daily prayers, offered with presence and intention rather than merely as habit, are the structural return of the heart to its creator built into every day. The recitation and reflection of the Quran, which speaks directly into whatever the heart is currently carrying. The dhikr, the remembrance of Allah, that can be practiced in any moment, any condition, any location, and that the Quran describes as the very thing in which hearts find rest. And dua, the direct, personal, unrestricted conversation with Allah that requires no intermediary and no special condition beyond sincerity. These practices are not decorative additions to a life already being managed elsewhere. They are the life, they are where the heart finds its ground. As the heart returns to Allah, fear about the future changes its character. It does not disappear entirely. Fear is part of the human design, and some level of it is appropriate and even protective, but the quality of it changes. The fear that comes from genuine trust in Allah is different from the fear that comes from believing you are navigating alone. The first is a fear that stays within its proper proportions. It prompts reasonable caution and sincere prayer, and then it rests. The second is a fear that expands without limit because it has no anchor. When your heart is genuinely returned to Allah, fear finds its proper size. It is felt, it is acknowledged, it is brought to Allah in dua, and then it is set down, not suppressed, set down, because the one you have given it to is capable of holding it and doing with it what you cannot. Everything changes when the heart returns to Allah. Not always the external situation, not always the timeline, not always the specific outcome you are hoping for, but the experience of your life changes. The way you carry it changes, the way you move through difficulty changes. The way you relate to people, to time, to uncertainty, to your own future changes. You become, over time, a person who is less easily shaken, not because nothing reaches you, but because what reaches you is being received by a heart that knows where it stands, a heart that has come home. And a heart that has genuinely come home to Allah does not need the world to be a particular way in order to be at peace. It is at peace because of where it is, not because of what surrounds it. That is the peace that hardship faced with faith eventually produces. That is what changes when you stop doubting and truly trust. You may not understand your hardship today, but Allah understands every detail of it. Your pain is not unseen, your tears are not ignored, and your dua is never unheard. The test is not there to destroy you. It is there to strengthen your faith and bring your heart back to Allah. Stop doubting what Allah can do. A single moment can change your entire life. Keep making dua, keep trusting, and keep moving forward with faith. When you place your trust in Allah completely, peace begins to enter your heart in a way the world can never give. Many women want to become high value, but they misunderstand what that really means. They think it is about appearance, attention, or how others treat them, so they try harder, give more, and chase validation, hoping it will increase their worth. But instead, it often leaves them feeling more exhausted and less respected. Islam teaches something completely different. A high value woman is not built by how people see her, but by how she sees herself and how she lives her values. She does not chase attention, she builds herself quietly. Today, we will understand what it actually means to become a high value woman and how you can build that value from within. 1. She stops seeking validation. Validation seeking is one of the most quietly consuming habits a person can carry. It shows up in the careful crafting of what you say before you say it, designed to produce a particular response. It shows up in the rereading of messages, searching for signs of approval in tone and word choice. It shows up in the way you measure the success of an interaction, not by how honest it was, but by how well it was received. None of this is dramatic. All of it is exhausting. And the deepest cost of it is not the energy it consumes, but the message it sends to your own heart again and again that your worth is something that needs to be verified by sources outside yourself, and that without that verification, it is uncertain. A woman who has stopped seeking validation does not become indifferent to how others experience her. She still cares about kindness, about honesty, about how her words and actions affect the people in her life. But she has separated caring from depending. She can care about how someone receives what she says without needing that reception to be positive in order to feel okay about herself. She can receive criticism without it destabilizing her sense of worth. She can receive praise without it inflating a self-esteem that was fragile to begin with. Her inner ground remains relatively stable regardless of what is being said about her at any given moment, because it is not resting on what is being said, it is resting on something deeper and more permanent. In Islam, the only opinion of you that carries ultimate weight is the opinion of Allah. He knows you entirely, not just the parts you present publicly, but the intentions beneath your actions, the struggles beneath your composure, the sincerity within your effort. And His regard for you is not determined by your performance or your appearance or the approval you have managed to accumulate from others. When a woman truly internalizes this, when she genuinely begins to seek Allah's pleasure above the pleasure of people, something shifts in her relationship with validation. The opinion of others does not become irrelevant, but it becomes smaller. It finds its proper place as useful feedback that can be considered, rather than as a verdict that determines her worth. There is also a quiet freedom in releasing the need for approval that affects how you communicate. When you are not managing other people's impressions of you, you become more honest. You say what you actually think, rather than what you have calculated will be well received. You disagree when you genuinely disagree, rather than performing agreement to maintain a comfortable social surface. You offer your real perspective, rather than the version of it that you have pre-softened to avoid any possible friction. This honesty is not harshness. It can be delivered with warmth and care, but it is genuine. And genuine communication builds genuine relationships in a way that approval-seeking performance never can. Stopping the seeking of validation is also deeply connected to how you make decisions. When approval is the primary driver, decisions are made based on what will look good, what will be praised, what will produce the most positive response from the people whose opinion you are trying to secure. But when your anchor is internal, when your primary question is whether a choice is right, honest, and aligned with your values and your faith, your decision-making becomes cleaner. You still consider others, but you are not governed by them. You can make an unpopular choice and hold it steadily because it was made from a place of genuine conviction rather than from the need to be seen in a particular way. The woman who has released validation seeking carries herself differently. It is not a visible performance of confidence. It is something quieter than that. It is the absence of a particular kind of tension that most people carry but rarely name. The tension of managing impressions, of keeping track of how you are landing, of adjusting yourself in real time to produce the desired response. When that tension is gone, what remains is a woman who is simply present in herself, in her relationships, in her life, not performing, not calculating, not reaching, just present. And that presence, uncomplicated and genuine, has an effect on others that no amount of impression management ever achieves. It is recognized, even if not always named, as something real. 2. She protects her time and energy. Time is one of the most honest measures of what a person values. You can say many things about what matters to you, but where your hours go tells a truer story than your words. A high-value woman understands this, and so she treats her time with the kind of intentionality that reflects how seriously she takes her own life and purpose. This does not mean she is rigid or unavailable. It means she is conscious. She knows that time spent in one place is time not spent somewhere else, and so she makes her choices with awareness rather than habit, with intention rather than the path of least resistance. She has moved past the stage of simply filling her hours with whatever presents itself. Energy is an equally precious resource, and it is even more easily overlooked. You can be physically present in a situation while your inner energy, your emotional availability, your mental clarity, your capacity for genuine engagement has been depleted long before you arrive. A woman who does not protect her energy finds herself showing up to the things that matter most in a depleted state, offering the leftover portions of herself to the people and purposes she cares about most deeply. She gives her freshness to what drains her and her exhaustion to what deserves her best. This pattern is so common that it has come to feel normal, but normal is not the same as wise or sustainable or in alignment with the life you are trying to build. One of the most common drains on a woman's energy is environments and relationships that traffic in negativity without resolution. Conversations that circle around complaint, friendships that are sustained entirely by shared criticism of others. Spaces where the primary currency is drama and where peace is in short supply. These environments are not always obviously toxic. They can feel familiar, even comfortable in a certain way, because they have been part of the landscape for a long time. But the high-value woman develops an honest awareness of how she feels after spending time in various environments. She notices what leaves her feeling lighter and more alive, and what leaves her feeling heavier and less herself. And she begins, gradually and without drama, to spend more time in the former and less in the latter. Gossip is worth addressing specifically because it is one of the most socially normalized ways that energy is wasted and the heart is quietly harmed. Islam treats the speaking ill of others with a seriousness that might surprise those who have come to see it as a harmless social habit. The Quran's image of it as consuming the flesh of an absent person is deliberately disturbing. It is meant to create in us a visceral awareness of what we are actually doing when we sit and speak of others without their knowledge. Beyond the harm it does to those being spoken of, it does something to the speaker as well. It trains the eye to see people through a lens of fault, and it consumes time and energy that could be spent on something that genuinely builds. Protecting time and energy also means learning the art of the quiet exit. Not every situation requires a confrontation or an explanation before you leave. Not every relationship that has run its course needs a formal conclusion before you stop investing in it. The high-value woman does not always make an announcement about what she is no longer available for. She simply gradually withdraws her presence and her energy from what is not serving her and redirects those resources toward what is. This is not coldness, it is discernment. It is the honest stewardship of what Allah has given her and what He has asked her to care for, beginning with her own soul and the life He has entrusted to her. When a woman becomes genuinely protective of her time and energy, the quality of everything she does improves. Her work deepens, her relationships become more present and more genuine, her worship becomes more focused, her rest becomes more restorative. This is the compounding return of intentional stewardship. When you stop leaking your resources in every direction, what remains is available to be directed with real power toward what matters. And what matters for a woman grounded in faith is building a life that reflects her values, serves her purpose, and honors the one who gave her the time and energy she was entrusted with in the first place. 3. She sets clear boundaries. A boundary, properly understood, is an act of honesty. It is the clear and calm communication of where you are, what you can offer, and what you are not available for. It is not an act of hostility. It is not a punishment delivered to someone who has disappointed you. It is not a wall built to keep people out. It is simply a truthful description of your limits, offered with dignity, held with consistency, and maintained not through anger but through the quiet authority of a woman who knows herself well enough to speak clearly about what she needs. This kind of clarity is one of the most generous things you can offer in any relationship because it removes the guessing and the assumption and the gradual erosion that comes from unspoken resentment. Many women struggle with boundaries, not because they do not know their limits, but because they do not believe they are entitled to have them. Somewhere in their formation, they learn that a good woman is endlessly available, that love means never saying no, that setting limits makes you cold or difficult or selfish. These beliefs are deeply embedded and they do not dissolve quickly, but they can be examined. And when you examine them honestly, when you ask where they came from and whether they are actually true, you often find that they were not chosen, they were simply absorbed. And what was absorbed without conscious choice can be released through conscious reflection and the slow accumulation of new experience. Islam is clear that taking care of yourself is not selfishness, it is stewardship. You have been entrusted with a body, a soul, a mind, and a life. These are not yours to spend without wisdom. They are yours to tend, to protect, and to use in a way that honors the one who gave them. When you allow others to consume your time, your emotional energy, and your inner peace without limit, you are not being generous, you are being negligent with a trust. A boundary, in this light, is not a refusal of generosity. It is a decision about what you can genuinely offer without depleting what you are asked to protect. It is the honest and responsible management of what you have been given. Setting a boundary clearly and calmly without excessive explanation or apology is something that requires practice. For women who are unaccustomed to it, the first few times feel enormously uncomfortable. The fear of disappointment, of being seen as difficult, of causing conflict, all of these fears rush in. But what is important to notice is that these fears are about other people's reactions, not about whether the boundary itself is right. You are allowed to have limits that are inconvenient for others. You are allowed to say no to things that cost you more than you can genuinely afford to give. And you are allowed to do so without constructing an elaborate justification for what is at its core simply the honest acknowledgement of your own humanity. The high-value woman's boundaries are not rigid rules applied without sensitivity. They are living responses to real situations adjusted with wisdom and care. She can make exceptions when her heart moves her to do so freely. She can extend herself beyond her usual limits for people and purposes that genuinely call for it. The difference is that these extensions are chosen rather than defaulted into. They come from a place of genuine desire to give rather than from the inability to say no. And because they are genuinely chosen, they do not produce the resentment that comes from giving under obligation. They produce the quiet satisfaction of a woman who gave because she wanted to, not because she did not know how to stop. One of the most powerful effects of consistently held boundaries is what they communicate about your sense of self. People, whether consciously or not, read your limits as an expression of your self-knowledge and your self-respect. A woman who maintains her limits calmly and consistently, without apology and without drama, communicates something that impression management never can, that she knows who she is, that she takes herself seriously, and that she will not be gradually reshaped by the pressure of others' expectations. This communication does not require a speech. It does not require a confrontation. It is simply the steady daily expression of a woman who has chosen to honor what Allah placed within her and who carries that choice with quiet and unshakable dignity. 4. She controls her emotions. To control your emotions is not to suppress them. This distinction is important because many people, when they hear the phrase emotional control, imagine a kind of internal performance, the maintaining of a composed exterior while something raw and unprocessed churns underneath. That is not control, that is concealment, and it comes with its own significant costs. True emotional control is something far more honest and far more sustainable. It is the capacity to feel what you feel fully, to acknowledge it without shame, and to choose your response rather than to simply release your reaction. It is the difference between being moved by your emotions and being governed by them. Both involve feeling, only one involves choosing. The reactive response, the one that comes out before you have had a moment to consider it, is rarely your best response. It is the response of the rawest, most immediate edge of the emotion, shaped by whatever has just happened to you rather than by who you have chosen to be. And while it may feel like honesty in the moment, it often produces consequences that the calmer part of you would not have chosen. Words said in the heat of reaction cannot always be taken back. Impressions created in moments of emotional flooding are difficult to revise. The high-value woman understands this not because she is trying to appear composed, but because she genuinely values the quality of how she engages with others and with herself. She has learned that the pause, however brief, is worth everything. Islam speaks beautifully about the virtue of holding anger in check. The Prophet, peace be upon him, described the strong person not as the one who can overpower others physically, but as the one who can control themselves in moments of anger. This is a profound reframing of strength. In a world that often equates emotional expression with authenticity and emotional restraint with repression, Islam says something different, that the discipline of your inner responses is one of the highest demonstrations of character you can offer. This does not mean your anger is invalid or that difficult emotions should be ignored. It means that your emotions are worthy of being felt with care, not merely discharged without thought. Developing emotional control is a practice that begins with self-awareness, specifically the ability to notice what you are feeling before it has already shaped your response. This noticing requires a certain inner quiet that overthinking and constant stimulation make difficult. A woman who has cultivated even a small degree of inner stillness through prayer, through reflection, through the daily practice of pausing before reacting, begins to develop a gap between stimulus and response, and in that gap, choice becomes possible. She can feel the sharpness of a hurtful comment and choose from within the feeling how she will respond. She can feel the frustration of a difficult situation and choose from within the frustration what her next step will be. Emotional control also profoundly affects the quality of your relationships. When the people in your life know that you will not respond to difficulty with volatility, that you can be trusted to engage with hard things calmly and honestly, they relate to you differently. Conversations that might otherwise be avoided become possible. Concerns that might otherwise go unspoken can be raised. The relationship becomes a safer place for both of you because neither of you is afraid of triggering an unpredictable reaction. This safety is one of the most valuable things a woman can offer in any relationship. The reassurance that your emotional responses, while genuine, are also considered, that you are someone who can be trusted with the full truth of a situation. As emotional control deepens, something beautiful happens to the emotions themselves. They become cleaner, less tangled, more honest. When you are not in the habit of reacting immediately, your feelings have space to clarify. The initial spike of irritation settles, and beneath it you often find something more true, a need, a value that was violated, a wish for things to be different. This deeper layer is the one worth addressing and communicating. The high-value woman does not lead with the spike. She waits for the deeper layer to become visible, and she speaks from there, with honesty, with clarity, and with the kind of emotional groundedness that makes what she says genuinely worth hearing. Her words carry weight not because she speaks often, but because she speaks from a place that is real. 5. She focuses on growth. There is a particular kind of suffering that comes from comparison, a suffering that is entirely self-generated and entirely avoidable, and yet one that consumes an enormous amount of the inner life of women who have not yet found their way past it. You look at someone else's life, her achievements, her relationships, her apparent ease in areas where you struggle, and something contracts inside you. The contraction is not just envy, though envy may be part of it. It is a more fundamental question being asked beneath the surface. If she has that, what does it mean about me? And this question, though it arrives dressed as a social comparison, is really a question about worth. It is the old question again, am I enough? The high-value woman has made a quiet but decisive shift away from this comparison. Not because she has achieved everything and therefore has nothing left to envy, but because she has genuinely changed the orientation of her growth. She is no longer measuring herself against others. She is measuring herself against who she was yesterday and against the woman she is sincerely trying to become. This is a race with only one participant, and it is the only race that actually moves you forward. Comparing yourself to others tells you where you stand relative to someone else, which is interesting but ultimately irrelevant. Comparing yourself to your own previous self tells you something far more valuable, whether you are growing. Growth in the Islamic framework is not purely about external achievement. It encompasses the refinement of character, the deepening of faith, the development of patience and gratitude, and emotional wisdom. These are the qualities that the Quran and the Sunnah return to again and again, not because worthy achievement is unimportant, but because the development of the inner person is what makes all outer achievement genuinely meaningful. A woman who has achieved much externally but has not cultivated her inner life is, in Islamic terms, impoverished in the areas that matter most. A woman who has cultivated genuine patience, sincere gratitude, and a living connection with Allah is rich, regardless of what her external circumstances look like. Focusing on growth also means developing an honest relationship with your own weaknesses. This is not easy. The natural response to perceived weakness is either to deny it or to be crushed by it, to pretend it is not there, or to treat it as evidence of fundamental inadequacy. The high-value woman does neither. She looks at her weaknesses with the same kind of honest care she would offer a struggling friend. She sees them clearly, acknowledges what they cost her and those around her, and then asks, what can I do about this? What is one small, genuine step towards something better? This approach transforms weaknesses from sources of shame into opportunities for growth. It makes the inner life a project of care rather than a source of self-condemnation. Spiritual growth deserves particular attention because it is the foundation on which every other form of growth rests. A woman who is growing in her relationship with Allah, who is deepening her understanding of the Quran, who is becoming more consistent in her prayer, who is developing a more living and less performative faith, is growing in the dimension that changes everything else. Her patience deepens because her trust in Allah deepens. Her gratitude expands because her awareness of His generosity expands. Her sense of purpose clarifies because her understanding of why she is here clarifies. Spiritual growth is not separate from becoming a high-value woman. It is its deepest root. Everything else that matters grows from here. The commitment to growth also changes how you relate to failure and setback. When growth is your orientation, failure becomes information rather than verdict. It tells you something about where more work is needed, what to try differently, what understanding was missing. It is not comfortable. Growth rarely is, but it is purposeful, and purposeful discomfort is entirely different from the aimless suffering that comes from stagnation. The high-value woman does not expect her path to be without difficulty. She expects it to be without wasted difficulty, meaning that every challenge, every setback, every season of struggle is met with the sincere question, what is this building in me? And when that question is asked honestly, the answer always points forward toward the woman she is quietly and consistently becoming. 6, she relies on Allah. Everything that has been discussed in this reflection, the release of validation seeking, the protection of time and energy, the holding of clear boundaries, the cultivation of emotional control, the commitment to genuine growth, all of it rests on a foundation. And that foundation is her relationship with Allah. Without it, these qualities are techniques. With it, they are expressions of faith. The difference is not subtle. A woman who practices emotional control because she has decided it is a useful strategy will find it difficult to maintain when circumstances become genuinely hard. A woman who practices it because she understands that her responses are an expression of her character before Allah, that will hold her steady when nothing else does. Tawakkul, genuine reliance on Allah, is one of the most misunderstood concepts in everyday Islamic life. It is often conflated with passivity. The idea that trusting Allah means not making plans, not taking initiative, not doing the practical work of building the life you want. But this is not tawakkul, it is its absence. True tawakkul, as the scholars have always described it, is what comes after you have done everything that is within your power. You think, you plan, you act wisely, you make the effort sincerely, and then, only then and completely, you release the outcome to Allah, The effort belongs to you, the outcome belongs to Him. Tawakkul is the living practice of honoring this distinction. A woman who truly relies on Allah moves through her life with a quality of inner steadiness that is genuinely rare and genuinely beautiful. She is not unaffected by what happens around her. She grieves when there is reason to grieve, feels frustrated when things are genuinely difficult, experiences the full range of human emotion in response to a life that does not always go as hoped. But she is not destabilized by any of it in the deep way that a woman without this foundation can be. Because her sense of self, her sense of purpose, and her sense of being cared for are not resting on her circumstances, they are resting on Allah, and Allah does not change with the winds of circumstance. He is constant. And the woman whose heart is rooted in Him shares, in some measure, in that constancy. Relying on Allah also means bringing your concerns to Him directly and frequently. Dua, the direct personal conversation with your Creator, is one of the most powerful and most underutilized resources available to a believing woman. It is not a formal ritual requiring specific conditions. It is the honest speech of a heart that knows it is being heard, offered at any moment, in any language, in any state. The high-value woman prays not only in the formal prayers that structure her day, but in the small, continuous turnings of the heart toward Allah that happen throughout her hours. When she faces a decision, she brings it to Him. When she is confused, she brings that too. When she succeeds, she returns the gratitude to its rightful source. This ongoing conversation is what keeps the relationship with Allah alive and real, rather than formal and distant. One of the practical gifts of genuine reliance on Allah is that it reduces the desperate edge of ambition. When you trust that Allah is arranging your affairs, that your provision, your relationships, your opportunities, and your growth are all within His care, you are freed from the anxiety that drives so much frantic striving. You can still work hard. You can still set goals and pursue them with energy and intention, but you are not working from a place of panic, not striving from a place of fear. You are doing your part in the genuine belief that it matters and releasing the rest in the genuine belief that it is held. This combination produces a quality of effort that is both more sustainable and more purposeful than anything anxiety can generate. The woman who relies on Allah is also more resilient in the face of what does not go her way. When something she worked for does not materialize, she is sad but not shattered, because she knows that what did not come was known to Allah, and that what He withheld from her, He withheld for reasons her limited perspective cannot fully access. This does not make the disappointment painless, but it places the pain within a larger story of trust, a story in which her Lord is not indifferent to her loss, but is working within it, building something she cannot yet see. This trust is what allows the high-value woman to fall without collapsing and to rise without arrogance. It is what makes her unshakable where others are fragile, and gentle where others are hardened. It is ultimately where all of her value begins and returns. Becoming a high-value woman is not about changing how others see you. It is about changing how you live. It is about the slow and sincere building of qualities within yourself that do not depend on any external confirmation to remain real, qualities that exist whether or not anyone is watching, whether or not you are being treated as you deserve, whether or not your worth is being recognized in the way you had hoped. These qualities, the release of validation seeking, the protection of your resources, the honesty of your boundaries, the steadiness of your responses, the sincerity of your growth, and the depth of your reliance on Allah are built quietly in the ordinary days of an ordinary life through choices that are mostly invisible to everyone but you and your Creator. When your value is rooted in faith, self-respect, and clarity, something changes in how you move through the world. You stop chasing, not because you have given up on what you want, but because you have stopped believing that chasing is how you get it. The right people, the right opportunities, the right circumstances, these are drawn to a woman who knows who she is, not to a woman who is working hard to prove it. This is not a promise that everything you want will arrive. It is the observation that a woman who is genuinely grounded in herself and in her faith creates the conditions within which what is truly meant for her can actually find her. She is no longer in motion away from herself. She is present, and presence is what makes arrival possible. What is not meant for you will no longer disturb your peace. This is perhaps the most elegant measure of whether this inner work is taking root. When something you wanted does not come, when a relationship does not develop as you hoped, when an opportunity passes to someone else, when a prayer is answered differently than you asked, the disturbance it creates in you becomes smaller. Not because you no longer care, but because your peace is no longer held hostage by outcomes. It rests in something more permanent than any particular result. It rests in your relationship with Allah, in your knowledge of your own worth, in the quiet confidence of a woman who has done her work honestly and released the rest to the one who holds all things. Indeed, Allah does not allow the reward of the doers of good to be lost. Quran 9:120. You're not building this woman for anyone else. You are building her for yourself and for Allah. The world may or may not recognize what you are becoming. The right people will, and their recognition will feel different from the validation you used to chase, because it will come unsolicited and without you having diminished yourself to earn it. But even in the absence of that recognition, the woman you are building will be worth having become. She will show up to her own life with steadiness. She will move through difficulty with grace. She will give from a place of genuine fullness rather than anxious need. And she will know in the quiet and certain way that requires no audience that she is enough, not because she earned it, but because Allah said so before she had done a single thing. May Allah make you a woman who knows her worth before the world tells her. May He build within you a confidence that is rooted in faith rather than performance, a peace that is rooted in trust rather than outcomes, and a strength that is rooted in His nearness rather than in the approval of people. May He protect you from what diminishes you and draw toward you what genuinely reflects your value. May every step you take toward becoming more honest, more grounded, and more sincerely yourself be a step that He blesses and increases. And may the woman you are quietly becoming be a source of light for yourself, for those whose lives you touch, and as an act of sincere gratitude to the one who created you already whole. Ameen.